You're listening to the DVM Podcast Empire, now with over 1 million downloads.
1 million downloads.
Find us online at dvmpe.com.
100% free.
1,000,000% fan.
And now,
Push the button.
Is it possible that we have permitted ideology, political and economic philosophies, and governmental policies to keep us from considering the very real, everyday problems of our people?
So what if my feelings are hurt? Does that give me the right to prevent others from expressing their opinions?
Wait a second, Doc! Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Mr. Anderson.
Don't push it.
Welcome back, everybody, to our post-Thanksgiving mid-holiday episode of Push the Button Podcast. I'm your host, David Vox Mullen, the man of many talents.
And I'm your other host, Mr. Anderson, the man of quite extraordinary, a multitude, really, a cornucopia, if you will, of talents.
Would you say I have a plethora? And today we wanted to do something a little special. We've been talking about it doing it for a while, and obviously for those of you who follow us on Twitter at PushButtonPod, or those of you who check us out on Facebook at Push the Button Podcast, we were talking about doing a mailbag episode, and we have done so. You guys have sent in some of your questions and some feedback, and we appreciate that.
So what you're saying is that somebody Twittered your Push Button Pod?
Yeah, somebody tweeted my Push Button Pod. And we got some questions, some simple ones, some larger ones, and so we're gonna kind of dig right in. Obviously, we got a very nice amount of them, and there's no way we can do them all. But go ahead.
First and foremost, I would like to just put a little something out there. I happen to be looking through one of my journals today. And on this glorious day.
This day, December 3rd, 2014?
Yeah, and I didn't even realize what the date was of the entry. Mm-hmm. I just was flipping through, not even looking at dates, and I happened upon one that sort of reminded me of why we're doing this podcast and how I was feeling at the time, and so I wanted to sort of share that with you. And it just so happens that this was written on Tuesday, December 3rd, 2013.
Wow, an exact year ago.
Crazy, right?
That is insane.
Here's what it says.
Clearly God led you to do that.
God led me to do that. It's just, it's breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs, bro. You gotta pick up breadcrumbs.
That's right.
Can't ignore the coincidences. There are no such things as coincidences. Anyhow, and some people believe that, and I'm okay with that. I don't believe that, but I don't have a problem, I guess, if you do. So anyway, here goes. Tuesday, 03 December 2013. Feeling extraordinarily frustrated today. After months and months of researching, reading, and studying religious cults, ideas, myths, texts, apologetics, counter-apologetics, those around me are highly resistant to even having a discussion about what they believe versus what I actually know and have come to know based on evidence. These people continue to bury their heads in the sand whenever the subject is brought up, but have no qualms present while regularly spouting nonsense about Christianity or belief in any superstition, praying, the war on Christmas, etc., etc. These people look at me with a sort of condescending pity and the impression that my life somehow lacks virtue or true meaning. I am free of dogma, superstition, and the belief that every move is somehow being recorded and scrutinized, not for posterity, but so that an omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, invisible dictator, whom we would never live under in a million years here on earth, can one day review and then pass judgment upon that recording.
That was it's pretty heavy, man.
Huh.
Now, were we already recording at that point, or no?
I don't think so. I don't think we were recording last Christmas.
You're right. No, we weren't. We weren't.
Nope.
So
I didn't see you at C2E2 until...
Well, I would have met you that April. Oh, no, that was this April. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So you voiced those concerns in December, and then, roughly 4 months later, I came into your life.
You did.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, at this stage in the game, do you feel like you now have that option? At least with me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's such a relief to me and a release. Like I said, I had been studying and reading and researching not just Dawkins and Hitchens and Sam Harris and these guys, but I have stacks and stacks of books upstairs. I probably have 80 books on Christianity, and I have maybe 10 that deal with atheism or come at the topic from an atheistic standpoint. And I just was feeling so frustrated because I couldn't even get anybody to have a conversation with me about it. And whenever I would bring up some of the more ridiculous things that I thought that I found within the Bible, I would get, and these were people that would regularly tell me that I needed this in my life. These are the people that would then say like, well, I don't know. I don't know about that. You'll have to talk to a theologian. Well, don't tell me that I'm wrong if you can't tell me why you think you're right. Yeah. And yeah. So, and the other thing, I don't have a problem with people being opinionated and bold, but you have to be willing to receive that as well. Because if you're just going to continuously throw stuff out at people, sometimes somebody's going to pick it up and throw it back to you. And you have to be able to play volleyball or ping pong.
Yeah.
And with you definitely do a great job, and you raise questions, and sometimes I feel like you're very open-minded all the time, and I appreciate that. And you have said many times on multiple occasions that our discussions have changed your mind about things, and
absolutely,
honestly, say the same here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has definitely given me a more tangible. What's the word I'm looking for? A more tangible taste in my mouth for trying to find out who and what God is. And the thing that you're helping me with is helping me kind of change that filter of, just accept it because that's what everybody says, and more of, well, let's find out the truth. And for me, it's admittedly, I'm coming at it from a different angle. I'm coming at it at I want there to be something, so I want to find evidence of it.
Right.
Whereas, others necessarily want to have the end-all, be-all confirmation that there is nothing. But
the fact that you know that and you recognize that you're coming at it from that perspective, I think that's something that a lot of people don't have.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it gives it more of a tangible, reality-based material. I'm using the irony here is that I'm using physical terms for abstract concepts, but it makes it mean more to me now than it did before. So in a weird way, you're helping me kind of experience that, and I think that's cool. And one of the things that we actually got an email from a listener that I wasn't going to mention until later into the episode, but seeing as how you started with this, we might as well kick this one off. We got an email from a listener who for understandable reasons, wants to remain anonymous. Mm-hmm. They may or may not be somebody that you may or may not know, audience. So we're just going to say this. They start off by saying, "Hey, Dave and Ken," parentheses, "Ken, I'm a huge fan." Nothing is said to me. I have been really thinking lately, and I am currently questioning my faith. I was raised as a Catholic for 18 years, but I have been questioning my stance on that particular religion the last couple of years. Your podcast has also really got me thinking, because I am having trouble believing that there is, in fact, a God, especially with all of the bad in this world. But I am also not necessarily sold on atheism. So does that make me an agnostic? Anyway, I want there to be a God and a beautiful afterlife, but with all of the scientific proof that's out there, it is hard to understand, yet alone believe, the Bible because it seems like a fairy tale. Also, I don't feel comfortable believing the Catholic religion 100% because I am now completely aware of the 100-plus religions that are out there, and the chances of mine or anybody else's religion being correct is slim to none. I also don't feel comfortable telling my family about my stance because I don't want to upset or offend them. Lastly, I kind of feel that if there is a God, he would let you attend heaven by just living a good life. Do you have any tips or ideas to run past me? I think maybe I'm thinking too much. Signed, Anonymous. That is a phenomenal, open-minded question.
Wow. That's an amazing email that you got there. And there's so much within that particular email that we're going to have to break that down.
Yeah. Let's do it.
The first question, he says, I'm not sold on atheism, so does that make me an agnostic? If you don't actively believe in a God, then you're an atheist. If belief is active, right? You either believe something or you do not.
Yeah. Well, and this person is saying that I think what the real issue here is not necessarily believing that there's a God, but agreeing with what Catholicism is saying he has to be in order to access, it looks like, eternity. If I'm reading his...
Right, but what he's saying right here is, I'm not sold on atheism. Well, I don't think you're ever sold on atheism. Atheism isn't a set of beliefs, it's a lack of a belief. It's like saying, what do you do for fun? I don't collect baseball cards.
Exactly.
So atheism is just a lack of a belief. Like I'm an A Santa Clausist. I'm an A Tooth Fairyist. I'm an A Unicornist. And I happen to be an atheist because I don't actively believe in a God. That does not necessarily mean that there are some atheists who say, I know that there is no God.
And if I'm overstepping here, but if I'm correct in my belief of what I've known of you and what I've learned from you, that is just as foolhardy.
Sort of
less foolhardy than saying there is, in your opinion, but still.
Well, no, it is. It depends on how you're coming at it. If you're coming at it from, just picking that out of the sky and saying, well, this one makes more sense to me, so therefore I believe it, then I think that is just as foolhardy. However, in my opinion, if you've looked at all the evidence out there and you've looked at the fact that there are thousands of religions that have existed throughout the course of humanity, and you're looking at the claims that are made versus what you see in reality every day, and if you're arriving at your conclusions that way, I think that's different. Because like I said, there's Aaron Ra, good friend of Matt Dillahunty, and I was just listening to a podcast that he did a little earlier today, and he was actually talking about this, and he was talking about what we know, and he said he used to be an atheist. An agnostic atheist. So he would say that he was pretty sure there wasn't a God. But so I'm screwing this up here. So agnostic, basically, gnosis is knowledge. Agnostic would be without knowledge. So what an agnostic says is that we can't know. We can't know if there's a God or not.
Or if we break that, Latin or Greek down, it sounds like because we don't know, or because there's a lack of knowledge, we can't definitively say one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Without knowledge.
Without knowledge, yeah, just without knowledge. We don't have.
So in a roundabout way, it's basically saying, I don't know.
And so Thomas Huxley, who was referred to as, Darwin's pit bull, I want to say. Bulldog?
Not to be confused with Darwin's bitch.
Darwin's bulldog.
Which, if it was a female dog, could still be considered Darwin's bitch.
Yeah, accurate.
You must refer to him now as Darwin's bitch from now on.
Darwin's bitch. Yeah. Enough time's passed. It's not too soon.
Too soon.
So he basically was the one that coined this version of agnosticism as, well, I'm just not sure. And that within the people who, I guess, within the atheistic community out there, that's sort of looked at as kind of a cop-out. So basically what I'm trying to say is if you don't actively believe, then you're an atheist, whether you like it or not. A lot of people don't like the term atheist. I told somebody at the gym the other day that I was an atheist. And they just this is a guy that I've been talking to for months and months and months. And the temperature of the room actually changed when I told him that I was an atheist. And then I sort of tried to explore that with him and say, why do you feel that way? And he's just like, I just don't like that word. It just sounds, because our society has taught people for years and years and years that atheism is the equivalent to Satanism, in my opinion.
And we know that that's not right.
Right.
Because an atheist doesn't believe in Satan either.
Right, exactly. And well, neither do most Satanists, actually.
Oh, yeah, how about it?
The Levian Satanists they're just pushing buttons for the sake of pushing buttons.
It's the ones who really do believe, the ones that I would be worried about.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, the vibe that I'm getting from the email, and it sounds to me like this anonymous person is kind of, I mean, I never really had to deal with Catholicism growing up, so I've got family members and close personal friends who do and did, and I'm fairly familiar with Catholicism and some of the ancient rituals that they still do, and some of the rules that to me don't make a whole lot of sense once you bring Christ into the equation. It seems like they're kind of hung up on some of the old ways of doing things. So I can see where that can be off-putting. This person keeps saying, I still kind of want there to be a God. I kind of feel like the quote was, I want there to be a God and a beautiful afterlife, but with all the scientific proof out there, it's hard to believe the Bible because it seems like such a fairy tale. And I would say that that's admittedly just this adventure that you and I are going on has put me kind of in a similar spot. I think when we talked about Christ, that was the one thing that made me stop losing sleep a little bit. Because it was like, okay, so I can at least tie my horse to the belief that this dude named Jesus existed, and then whether or not I take the jump into believing the stories about him, that's my call. But but the majority of the tales that were woven throughout the Old Testament, it does get very difficult to kind of follow. And I only say that because I'm not a theologian. I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who are comfortable with those stories because they have found a way to make sense of them on their own, whether they are taking them literally, which of course you and I think that would be a really strange thing to do, or people who find a way to use them as allegory or symbolism or parables, as they say. That is what I lean towards these days. I won't lie, there was definitely a point where I was more apt to believe some of those stories. I think it's because I want to believe in how awesome and spectacular the God I believe in is. So it's like, well, yeah, why couldn't the God I believe in, who is the end all be all of all things, not able to do these things that seem miraculous?
Well, but there are also, if you take you can't just have the good without taking the bad also, and there's tons and tons of bad.
If you subscribe to the Facts of Life theme song, I agree with you, but in reality, that's not true.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, what you're saying is if I take the good, I have to accept all of the bad stuff that people are extrapolating from the information that's in that Old Testament.
Well, I don't see how you extrapolate.
Well, just like you and I had that conversation about how Jesus was allegedly saying that it's okay to beat slaves, and that's not. I don't believe that's what he was saying, but I can see where people read that and go, "That's clearly what he's saying." And it's if we haven't learned anything in media these days, is that things can be completely taken out of context, and so it's.
Well, in the case of Jesus, it was 60 to 90 years after he died, so
and again, you get into even more with that stuff. So it's tough, but
what I'm saying is if you take all the creation story and how he created all this symbiotic environment that we live in, and just this universe, this wonderful universe, you also have to take into consideration that the guy who poofed everything into existence decided that he couldn't unpoof everything. He had to submit everybody on planet Earth, including pandas and babies and monkeys and, zebras and all the cute little animals in the world, to a horrific drowning death. He couldn't just wipe the slate clean.
And again, that's where you get into did that literally happen, or is it,
or is it allegory?
Is it allegory, or is it
That's the best allegory that God could supposedly the Bible was not commanded, but men were. What's the word I'm looking for?
Inspired.
Inspired. If that's the best story that God could inspire man to write, bro, I have a hard time. That story is told to children as a cute little story. Well, the little animals are going to go for a ride on the boat.
Yeah.
He's murdering everybody on planet Earth.
Yeah, and again,
he's drowning all of his kids in the bathtub because he's angry with their behavior.
And realistically, if you lived in New Orleans and didn't have a vehicle and only were on foot, it would seem like the whole world was flooding. So, but again, that starts bringing, realism into it. And so some Christians will freak out when I take them down that road. And I'm not sure that it is or isn't one thing or the other. So it's one of those things for me where it's like, okay, yeah. So when in doubt, the one thing for me that keeps me hanging into this leaning towards a belief structure. I don't even want to say belief structure because that implies that there's rules, and it's not. But it's the Christ story. That to me is what keeps coming back for me. And again, like you said, the information we have is decades after he existed, but I personally don't doubt that he did exist. Whether or not he, was this divinity, that's where, do I take someone's word for it or not? That's my life. That's my decision. I got to figure out.
Yep.
But to bring it back to this email, I would say, I don't want to poo-poo Catholicism or Lutherans or Baptists or Jehovah's Witnesses or who else, Mormons, or that's not my point. And granted, I've offended all of them equally at different times, but for this purpose, I would say I think it's I think it's pure pride that makes us say, my specific way of believing things is right, and implying that someone else could be wrong, I think is just too prideful. And as we know, pride comes before the fall. So, unless you're looking to be smacked in the face with reality, I wouldn't go around, saying I'm right, you're wrong, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, right. And there's people who do that. So and I'll let you have the final word on this one, but as a person who believes that there is a God, whether or not he is or isn't the personality that some people take him to be, as a person who does believe that Jesus was in Nazareth and did some stuff, I would say that I wouldn't rely on Catholicism or Lutheranism or Pentecostal or Baptist or any of the side doctrines or denominations. I wouldn't rest too heavily on any one of them ever. I think it really has to boil down to the one thing that all of them remind you that you need to have, which is a personal relationship. And when it's personal, it means it's nobody else's freaking business. So at the end of the day, it really is going to boil down to where you're at mentally, where you're at, spiritually, as I hear Ken cringing. But yeah, I mean, I think, I don't think it's wrong to ask those questions. And again, I don't think it's wrong for you to say, how do you believe in a God or accept a God who, according to what I'm reading, looks like a terrible dictator, tyrant. And I think that's an absolutely fair question to ask. And admittedly, there are times when I ask the same question, say, God, why does it look like you've done this? When allegedly you want this. And so, that's the mystery that I search and am constantly trying to get to the bottom of. And I haven't had a definitive one way or the other yet. That's just where I'm at. Ken, where are you at?
So I would just say that I don't believe in anything because I want to, or because somebody else told me that I need to. In fact, when somebody tells me that I need to believe this thing,
it's a surefire way to shut you down.
Really, and it to make me really question it. Why is this person telling me not to research this? Why are they telling me not to look into this?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And if anybody's doing that, you shouldn't do that.
And I think you have to look at reality. Read that book. It's a fascinating book. It really is. The Bible. Read all of the religious texts out there.
Yeah.
And when you do so, sit down and honestly ask yourself, why is it that I believe this one over all these other ones?
Yeah.
Why is it that I believe, as I said before, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but there are virtually thousands of gods that have existed that people have prayed to just as hard as you or, family members of mine or that I used to pray to. There are thousands of these gods that people killed for, that behaved in certain ways, whether that was, by today's standards, good or bad or indifferent. And ask yourself why you don't believe in any of those gods. And
I would venture to guess, and I'm speaking to myself as well, that a lot of it stems from a fear of what happens when we die.
Yes, and but I believe that fear begins at almost birth, when our parents teach us this is what happens to us when we die. And so instead of teaching people we don't know what happens when you die, Nobody knows. Nobody's ever actually been dead for 10 days and then been resurrected. It's just never happened. We've never interviewed anybody. We just don't have this information. So we don't know. We can speculate. And this person over here believes this, and that guy over there believes that. And
well, I mean, we could go so many different directions.
but this is, we teach our kids, this is what we believe in our household. We believe that you die, and if you are a good person, you go to heaven. And if you are a bad person, you go to the burning place. You tortured for eternity. So if, as a 2-year-old kid, you're told, like, if I misbehave and if I don't believe this stuff, I'm going to be tortured, not just for a few years, not just for a couple days, eternity.
Yeah.
And I remember being scared of, I remember as a kid, my parents had some friends over and they rented a bunch of movies one night. And I must have been 7 or 8. And they put me in bed at some point, and I remember I could hear, because they had the music turned up really loud through the speakers, through the stereo system. Uh-huh. It was like this horror movie. And for 2 years after that, I couldn't sleep. Because I just remembered, like, just hearing the sounds of it. I remember the movie specifically, it was called The Mutilator. And at one point, amidst the screams and stuff, I heard this guy, I'm coming to get you. And I just heard that every single night. So what I'm trying to get at is that you tell a kid at 2 or 3 years old that he's going to be tortured for eternity. It's pretty hard to get that out of your system. And I think that's where a lot of adult belief comes from. Too. Because it's never been expunged from our...
That's interesting. Yeah, right. I like it. 100% like it. Next question. Yeah. We're gonna go.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
He asked, "Do you have any tips or ideas to run past me?"
Okay. Yeah.
Read.
Read a freaking book.
If you don't like reading, there are tons of audiobooks out there. Don't just take my word for it. Read Christian apologists. Read.
Wasn't that the LeVar Burton quote on Reading Rainbow? You don't have to take my word for it.
Don't take my word for it. Yeah, totally.
Oh gosh. No, I agree.
And read Hitchens, read Dawkins, read Sam Harris. Just listen to what these guys have to say. I'm not trying to get you to agree one way or the other. Figure it out for yourself. There's tons of debates on YouTube between Christian apologetics or Christian apologists and atheists.
And if you are a person who is similar to Mr. Anonymous here, or myself, and you're afraid of losing said faith because of researching this stuff, let me just tell you, first of all, if you could be talked out of Christianity, you could have never have been talked in the first place. Second of all, I actively research this information, and I find the things that these people are saying extremely profound, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for these guys. And it hasn't made me lose any of my faith. It's changed the lens in which I view the world, but it's not something that has stripped away all belief from me. So that's not to say that you should or shouldn't do it, but definitely don't let that be a fear stopping you from listening to things that are being said from, say, the opposition of what you're normally getting pumped down your throat.
And also, another question he had was that he doesn't feel comfortable telling his family about his stance because he doesn't want to upset or offend them.
Yeah. Well, you know what that's like, right?
I really do. And you're more than welcome to email me at any time, and we can have a dialogue back and forth. And I can point you in the direction. There are many secular groups out there of like-minded individuals, if that's the way you're leaning, or even if you just needed somebody to talk to. It's always good. It's hard when you feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
And since 93% of our population, according to some polls, say that they believe that Christ is going to come back within their lifetime, well, that's probably like 46% believe that Christ is going to come back. But 93% in this country call themselves Christians. And if you're having a hard time with that, you just want to talk to somebody, there are groups out there and that can help you. And just at the end of the day, family acts like family.
Yeah.
And I've had to do this in my own life. I've had to rid myself of family members who were corrosive to the life that I want to live.
Yeah.
If family treats you like garbage, it doesn't matter if they're blood. Somebody treats you like crap, if they treat your wife like crap, if they treat your kids like crap, if they treat your friends like garbage, you don't have to take it. You stand up for yourself, and you can just cut the ties, cut the umbilical cord.
Yeah.
And, that's my suggestion.
And I agree with that 100%. And I think that you'll find if you do that, the separation sometimes speaks more volumes than standing there taking crap. And I've experienced similar situations with my family where I've had to say, you're done. And after a few years, we bury the hatchet and find out that, we can move forward and things like that. So sometimes the separation does help. But we have more to get to.
Okay, yeah.
So this is definitely a pro wrestling question for you, Ken. Rebecca Morris from London wants to know, what was your best/worst experience as a professional wrestler? So let's go backwards. What was the worst thing you've ever experienced as a pro wrestler, and then what's been the best thing you've experienced?
Oh, the worst thing I've ever experienced as a pro wrestler. Boy.
Having to podcast with some dude in Chicago.
I'll tell you what. It's not really the worst experience of my life. It was just an experience, and it wasn't pleasant or pleasurable. So I had the misfortune of being booked on a show last weekend, actually, in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is an hour and a half away. I live in Minneapolis, or on the outskirts of Minneapolis. And it was an hour and a half away from my house. And the promoter calls me out of the blue and says, hey, I have a show, and I had Booker T and Chris Masters and Sean Davari booked on the show. But for whatever reason, they can't do the show. Sort of last minute, can you do the show? So I said, sure. And we agreed on a fee. And
isn't that like a red flag though, right there?
Sort of. And you know what? The thing is I actually I'm friends with Booker T's manager. I'm friends with Booker T, but I'm friends with his manager, and his manager called me and said, like, this guy is false advertising Booker T and Chris Masters and Sean Davari on the show. Mm. So automatically I felt like I shouldn't do this show. And Davari is my best friend in the business, and I didn't even reach out to him and ask him about this guy. And the thing was that it was an hour and a half away. It was, money's green. I thought, if this guy turns out to be a total flake, well, I'm not going to really be out that much. It'll be a good little break, I've been home for a few months because TNA hasn't been, we taped all of our shows like a couple months ago. And so I thought, like, all right, I'll just do this. And I had a couple friends coming over from Green Bay. It'd be great. So anyway, the first night there was an autograph session the night before. I did that. It was fine. Got to the hotel, and the guy said, hey, would you mind just covering the hotel, and then I'll get you tomorrow when I pay you for your wrestling appearance? Sure, it's fine.
Man.
So, and then I might want to inform you that, so the show was initially booked in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. 2 days before the show, the promoter moved it to Winona, Minnesota. which is about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away from Eau Claire. So this promoter, with 2 days advance notice, moves an entire show to a different state. So, again, Winona's 3 hours south of my house, and I have some family that lives down there, so I thought, okay, whatever. I go to the show, and before the show, I told the promoter, I said, I'm not going in the ring unless you pay me. So you're going to have to pay me before my music hits, or don't bother hitting my music.
Good.
No. So then I proceeded to go sit at my table, and I sold T-shirts and 8x10s, and I met little kids and talked to adults who were excited. They'd seen me wrestle on TV and, all over the place for both WWE and TNA. And then, there was a lot of young talent in the locker room. And it's always, I remember being in that position. It's always good to have somebody who's been to the dance, who can watch your match and give you feedback. And then the guy that I was working with, I think, I was excited to work with him. I think he was excited to work with me. We had everything all, figured out. And right before the match that was right before us, the promoter came and said, I can't pay you. I don't have any money. And I said, well, you don't have any money at all? And he said, no, I don't have anything. I can't pay anybody. Nobody's getting paid tonight.
Oh, jeez.
So all these performers, all these wrestlers, these indie guys who, independent wrestlers make, when you're starting out, if you make $50, it's a good night. And you do it for the experience. And there were a lot of nights that I didn't get paid at all. All I got at the end of the night was a hot dog and a handshake. And I was happy about it. But at the same time, a lot of times you're relying on that $50 to put gas in your tank and, maybe a meal in your belly so that you can get back home, so you can do your real job. So that was, that stressed me out more than anything, was knowing that none of these guys were going to get paid. And so at this point, like I said, I had met all these fans and I had signed autographs and sold T-shirts and things like that, and people were excited. I wasn't about to not go out there and perform for those people.
Right.
So I did what I feel in that situation was the right thing, and I went out there and I performed, knowing that I wasn't going to get paid. And I went out and I gave 100% like I always do. And so did the guy that I wrestled with. And, I had every intention of grabbing that microphone and running the promoter down and telling the people. And I didn't. I just tried to send, brought a little kid in the ring and gave him a good time. So anyway.
Well, that speaks volumes. And, man, that's a crappy situation. I'm not a pro wrestler, but I've experienced very similar situations on the road and promoters and club owners and comedy. It's music and
there's a lot of scumbags out there.
There are.
And then a few days later, I have to tell you this. So a few days later, I get a text message from another one of the guys on the show. And he and I had been talking, and he said that he had been doing some digging and found out that this guy had been put in jail 2 days before in Eau Claire for writing bad checks, writing $1,500 worth of bad checks too.
That's terrible.
So somebody bailed him out of jail 2 days before the show. I remember I got a text the morning of the show, and somebody said, hey, I heard that promoter just got put in jail. And I was actually in the hotel lobby looking at him when I got the text message. I was like, no, he's not. He's standing right in front of me. Yeah. So I just didn't, I thought, well, rumors are rumors. And it turns out that the guy was somewhat accurate, that he had been in jail, that he had just been bailed out. Then, turns out in 2012, he ran some scam with a bunch of wrestlers out on the East Coast. And it said on one of the websites that he was actually considered to be a fugitive from justice because he had run this scam.
Oh, man.
And then, now this is the kicker to me. This is just, if I would have known this, I might have handled things a little differently. But it's on his record that this guy freaking has...
Don't say it.
lewd. Performed. He was cited or he was convicted of performing a lewd act on a 16-year-old boy years ago. Yeah. So. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of scumbags out there, and there's a lot of scumbags in the wrestling business. There's also a lot of great people in the wrestling business.
Well, that's a pretty crappy situation. What was one of your best experiences?
So, I would have to say, winning the Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania 23 in front of like 81,000 people
and millions at home.
Millions around the world at Ford Field was pretty cool. And I remember during that match, I got to give a little Hornswoggle, who's a buddy of mine from Green Bay. We didn't start in the business together, but he started in Green Bay when I was already wrestling, and we were on shows together. And I gave him the Finley roll off the top of the ladder.
Huh.
And I remember, thinking, God, I just squashed the piss out of him. And he when I gave it to him, he rolled. If you don't know what it is, it's like I put the guy on my shoulders, so I'm standing on top of a ladder or pretty high up on the ladder.
Right.
And I put the guy on my shoulders, and I do like a forward roll, and I squash him into the mat.
Okay.
And I did this to Hornswoggle, who is a little person.
Oh yeah.
Or in the business, we call them midgets. He
Right.
actually prefers to be called a midget, by the way. So, yeah. And so I thought, man, I just squashed the piss out of this guy. And I sort of, just under my breath, I said, like, are you okay? And he goes, yeah, buddy, I'm fine. How are you? It was one of those surreal moments. We've got 81,000 people surrounding us. We've got, like you said, millions of people watching around the world. And we're having a little conversation.
Oh, that's great. That's
and then
great.
The very last thing that I did in the match was CM Punk and I, who also, his first show, my second show, we were on the show together. And we were in this little tiny armory in BFE, Wisconsin. It was near Madison. I can't even remember what the name of the town was off the top of my head. But we had done this show, and we had talked about it, and we were up at the top of the ladder, and we were trading punches back and forth. We were sort of both going for the briefcase. And he just said to me, he said, this is a long way from Whitewater, Wisconsin, huh?
Huh.
Or we come a long way since Whitewater, Wisconsin. And it was just kind of one of those cool moments. And then I popped him, and he took a bump off the ladder, and I grabbed the briefcase. So,
wow,
it was cool. In addition to that, I must say the stuff that I've done with Wounded Warrior Project and visiting Walter Reed Army Medical Center and Bethesda, the hospitals, and visiting our troops, our wounded veterans, going over to Iraq with the tribute to the troops. Those are, and just the dealings that I have on a daily basis with kids, that's what makes my job cool. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. Next question. Hey, guys, I'd be interested to hear your opinions on a little thing called respect. It seems like the older generations have this warped mindset of thinking that just because someone is older than you, that they are owed respect because of age. Now, just to be clear, I'm not referring to basic respect where you treat someone kindly if you don't know them. I'm talking about the kind of respect a mother or a father demand and expect simply because they are your parents. I grew up on George Carlin, so I learned that respect should be earned and maintained, not automatically given. For example, if your grandma starts talking down to you, then I believe you have the right to return the favor without fear of disrespecting her. What are your thoughts, R.D. Lee? Interesting. I'm not quite sure where I'm at on that one.
So I agree with the George Carlin.
Yeah, are you asking if it's okay to talk trash to your grandma? Is that?
Well, no, but I think, yes, I do. I think he is asking that, and I think that is a valid question to ask.
I think once grandma gets senile enough that she starts saying really mean crap, then you have every right. That's right.
You got to give her a pass then.
My great grandmother, when she started getting towards the end of life, and I was one of the people who was fortunate enough to know his great grandparents. She was a lovely Irish woman who, when she would drink, she would get her Irish brogue back. But I started gaining weight out of high school, and she, oh, David, you're looking a little thick in the neck there, I'd be like, shut up, Grandma.
That's funny.
So,
yeah. I think, and this is sort of, I think this ties into what we were talking about earlier with the family situation, how, family acts like family. And I don't care who you are.
Wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? Family acts like family. What does that mean when you say that?
Like, I think you can find family anywhere.
Okay. So family acts like family. I gotcha.
I find family on the road.
Right.
The family are the people in your life who treat you with the same amount of dignity and respect that they expect.
Okay.
Family will challenge you when you screw up. They'll call you on your bullshit.
Yeah.
They'll also do it in a loving way, I think. But I think I don't care who you are. If you treat me like garbage, if you treat my family like garbage, if you spread lies about us, I had a family member who just continuously hammered on my wife. And
I had a family member who did the same thing on your wife, which was really weird because they didn't even know her, but whatever.
My wife.
No,
Whoa! I hate them too.
Right.
And it came to a point where, look, this is my wife. I love her. I don't agree with what you're saying. And, I don't agree with your assessment of the situation. You don't know our whole story. You don't know all the surrounding details.
Right.
Just, you have to have a certain amount of respect. Like I have friends who I don't necessarily care for their wives or girlfriends, maybe so much.
All right.
I will never say one bad thing. Even if that guy comes to me and bitches to me about that woman, I will just sit and listen. I just feel that I don't know.
Well, I've had the same conversation with my wife about this, and I think where you're at is if you love your friend, then you have to love who they love.
You just have to love the fact that they're happy.
Yes.
Whatever, if that version of happiness isn't your happiness, that's okay.
You don't have to hang out with that person.
Yep.
But if I've had friends who have fallen in love with women and their families weren't necessarily accepting of that, and I'm kind of like, hey, if you love this person, then you should at least respect that he loves this person. And, I think that's kind of where it is. So at least that's where I try to be. Now, granted, I've got some friends whose better halves are a little less than desirable, but for the most part, I don't spend too much time even thinking about them because, hey, if they're happy, then I'm happy.
Right. And I just, at some point, it was like, don't make me choose. Don't make me choose between them.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like there was a line drawn. I drew the line in the sand and said enough is enough. And if this continues, I'm just going to pull stakes. I'm going to pull stakes and go. And at some point, if the door's always open, if you want to come back into my life. But for now, I'm going to cease to be a part of your life. So from time to time, I'll get emails from this person, and they'll be sort of nasty.
Oh my God!
It's been 4 years. It's been 5 years since I've talked to this person. And
wow.
And But I still, from every 6 months or so, I'll get a nasty email, and I never respond to them. I just delete them or I file them.
Let me ask you a question. Is this person bipolar?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Honestly.
Okay, so I'm not trying to gleam off of your story. I'm gonna share.
No, please share. Please share.
I literally went through almost the exact same scenario with my own mother. It was, I was her best buddy. She was a single mom. She and I taking on the world. But when I grew up, she had a hard time, like a lot of moms do, with me, kind of moving on and falling in love with another woman and all that stuff. And for the longest time, I was, juggling, taking care of my, my fiance at the time, and trying to appease my mother, who seemed okay on the surface, but then, there'd be underlying things. In turn, I get married, and then all of a sudden I start hearing a lot of shit talking about my wife. And, when I would, I'm pretty tough to a degree as far as taking care of my own and standing up for myself. But when it's your mom, it's a whole other thing, because you're supposed to respect your mom. And I think this goes back to Artie's question, but it got really bad. It got ridiculously bad. I mean, I would stand up to my mother and say, listen, this is my wife. This is my family. I need to, do what's right for my family. And I can't have you, saying these things or I can't change the way you feel, but this is just how it's going to be from now on. I'm married. This is what my life is. And, it got bad. It got really ridiculously bad, to the point where, and granted, I believe my mom is bipolar, so there is some of that there, but it got to a point where there were unacceptable threats being made on behalf of my mother. And she was dealing with some drug issues and stuff.
From your mother. Your mother was making threats?
My mother was making legitimate threats, to the point where she was like saying, if you this, then I'll do that, type of a thing. And she was dealing, like I said, she was on painkillers, and she was mixing those with antidepressants, and always a great combination. Don't ever do that. And it got to the point where finally I just said, I have to protect my family, and we need to be done. And so I said, I'm done. I love you. I know you don't understand. I do love you. But because I love you, I have to say goodbye. And I cut communications with my mom. And just like you're saying, about every month I'd get an email. And I saved them. I actually still have them. Because I was considering writing a book at some point in my life.
Really?
About how to be a son dealing with a bipolar parent. Because if I were to ever show anybody these letters, I would have to change them for legal sake. But,
sure.
One email would be just, I love you, I'm sorry, let's work this out, blah, blah, blah. And then I wouldn't even respond to it, because it was just it's this hook that would pull me in. Then another week or two would go by, I'd get another email saying, fuck you, you're ungrateful, I can't believe you're my son, just ridiculous stuff. And it would just go back and forth, and it would literally bounce back and forth between I'm sorry, I love you, forgive me, to I hate you, you're the worst thing that ever happened in my life, and things that every son wants to hear from their mom, all because I stood up to her and said, this is my wife, this is my family, and you're not allowed to do that. I will say this. It was about 5 years. It was about the 5-year mark. And all my friends would say, it's family, it's your mom, time heals all. I never believed it. But after about 5 years, it finally did. Now, granted, she had to do a lot of work. She got off of the drugs, she got cleaned up, and she paid some heavy prices. And she even said to me, I just want you to know I'm clean. I don't expect you to just, forgive me, but I just want you to know that I'm working on it. And that was a couple of years ago. And actually, I want to say it's been about 6-7 years total since when we first stopped talking to each other. And this is the first year I've actually invited her to come out to my place for Christmas this year. So this is like, we're baby steps. I think I've seen her maybe 4 times this year, which in retrospect, I used to see her every other week. And it's one of those things where.
Did she come to that realization? She had to have come, because
she did. Eventually, she did.
Yeah, because the thing with me and my situation is, I've told this person repeatedly that they need to figure it out for themselves. And so I'm assuming that at some point she just, what was the catalyst that caused her to?
Honestly, I think it was realizing that I'm done. I wasn't responding to emails. She'd hear from other family members that I would come and visit family, and my kids were growing up, and she wasn't a part of their lives. And that's the part, honestly, Ken, that's the part that hurt me the most, was that I couldn't let my children know their grandmother. But it was for their own good. She was off the wall. And I'm proud to say now that they do know her now, and it's it's guarded, but it is what it is.
Wow, man,
it's surreal, man. I know.
Yeah, it really is, and I feel like everything I just listened to was almost a mirror image of
We'll talk off air.
Situation, right? and I will just say that. I think that is the best avenue is to not play ping pong. At some point, if you decide that this person is, respect is earned, not given, just freely. And if this person can't do anything to earn that respect, and you decide to cut ties, cut ties. Don't continue to play this passive aggressive game. And I see a lot of people doing it, where you sort of keep an open line of communication. This person was completely cut off from everything, and like I said, I don't respond to nasty emails. I don't respond to nasty text messages or things that I'll hear from family members. I just, it's weird because you almost approach it from, it feels like a death almost.
Yeah, very much so.
Right?
My wife used to comment, Debbie, she used to say to me, wow, I can tell when your mom sent you an email because your attitude changed. Because I would see it. Of course, we'd read them. We'd read it. And it would just shake my whole day, because it's like, now I've got to deal with this. I've got to deal with the knowledge that, I was wrestling with, am I hurting my mom or am I helping my mom? And the answer was yes.
Right.
It's both. And again, I can gladly say I would never want to go through it again. Absolutely not. But I'm glad to say that we did get through it. And it was, like I said, 6-7 years in total, where we're at a place now where I'm comfortable reaching out to her. I honestly, I don't talk to her much, but when I do, it's, I don't want to hear your opinions of our family. I don't want to hear, we have this understanding that we kind of treat each other with a newfound respect.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. I really am.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad.
There is hope.
There is. There truly is, bro. I will say that.
I must say that while I pulled us back from the situation.
Yeah.
It's not like I do it with joy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me happy. I wish that it wasn't this way, but it just has to be this way.
Even though that person probably thinks you did.
Right. Yeah, they think that I'm just, having a
being selfish, doing your own thing. Yeah, exactly.
It's not the situation at all.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it ripped me apart when I had to do that.
So family acts like family, and respect is earned.
Ken, Paula wants to know if you could wrestle anywhere, where would it be?
Where would it be?
Well, Paula,
I'll tell you, one of my favorite places to wrestle is Japan. Love it. I love the culture over there. I've been to Tokyo a few times, and I just love it. My wife was with me on one of the occasions, well, we went over to do some press and I think we spent 3 days there, and it's just.
Was it like Lost in Translation?
There are some things over there that are just, I won't say weird. I mean, I guess I don't find anything to be weird, really. Like, I shouldn't say that. I do, but
new game show for the show is does Ken think this is weird? Send in your pictures.
Like, you hear about things over there, like they have women's panties in vending machines over there, stuff like that.
Okay.
So I guess stuff like that is weird to me, but I love the people. Here in America, a lot of times when I was in Detroit for WrestleMania weekend. I was at a GameStop with my wife at the mall, and some lady walks up to me and goes, "You're not going anywhere."
Okay.
She had a little 5-year-old kid with her. And the heel in me came out, and I was like, I wanted to, like, she turned around and she went back and she grabbed the little kid, and I was like going to heel on her, and I was going to cuss her out. And I saw the little 5-year-old kid, and I'm like, I'm not going to punish the 5-year-old for his mom doesn't have any manners. Over in Japan, it's completely different. I remember my wife and I came down in the morning, and they knew that my wife was with me. They had gifts for us both.
Wow.
And then they would give you a gift and say, like, would you mind if I took a picture with you? It's just a very cool culture. Love the food, obviously. I love sushi. And we had, they do this thing over there. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. Where it's the thinly sliced Kobe beef.
Ooh.
And they prepare a broth with vegetables and some kind of seasoning and spices and stuff like that. And basically, you eat the vegetables and then you take the beef, and it's raw, and you just it's called shabu shabu actually. And you just, with your chopsticks, you take the meat and you just like dip it into the broth, and the broth instantly cooks it, and you eat it, and it's just.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
It's so good. So good. And we actually ate it upstairs at the restaurant where Kill Bill was filmed.
Oh, totally cool.
Yeah.
Then the 77s come running in.
So yeah, Japan, all the way.
Very nice, very nice. We got one that says, "Dear friends, I am Yao Gakpo Coffee, a solicitor at law and attorney to late engineer Late, a citizen of your country who lived and worked in Togo for many years. Before his sudden death, I have urgent information for you regarding his estate. This is not a real email."
You kidding me? Are you kidding me with this?
Yeah, I'm kidding you. Actually, we got one for me. Yay! It says, "David, how long have you been a comedian, and will you ever release any more music?" Wow. Okay. I have been a comedian my whole life. I have
messed up childhood.
That's right. I have been regularly performing comedy for a little over a year now, getting paid professionally for about 9-10 months now, which is nice. Before that, yes, I was a musician, and I'm always a musician. I was in a rock band called The Slipstream, which you can still go buy on iTunes. The album is called Slipthology, if you want to go check it out. We actually released 3 albums, and I guess 4 now. 4 albums, because one's an anthology album.
What genre?
Alternative rock, hard rock type stuff. We did the Chicago music scene and then branched out of there, and I have toyed with the idea of doing some more music. I'm actually producing artists right now. Be on the lookout for some stuff that if you go to davidvoxmullen.com, you can see some of the stuff I've done. It's definitely, every Christmas I start thinking about wanting to do like some Christmas music, and then I'd like to do a cover album, maybe do a cover album, get some cool people to sing with me or something. But yeah, Yeah, Ken and I'll do Christmas.
Wow, that would be fantastic.
We'll do an all Christian album.
There you go.
So there you have it. But I've been a working performer and an entertainer for 20 years. So and I'm going to do it till I die. So that's all there is to it. And I'm sure Ken feels the same way.
Absolutely. That's all I've ever wanted to do was entertain.
Yeah, literally, because we're broken people. That's what we do.
Thank God for those messed up childhoods.
You're making us millionaires. All right, last question of the episode. My wife and I have been discussing a lot on the government about how they're watching literally everything that every one of us in the United States is doing online, and it's somehow being stored into some databases. I'd like to know both of your thoughts and views on this and what you would both do. Well, I'm of the mind that you're absolutely right, Mr. Ventura. Thank you for emailing in. You know, this may come as a shock to some of you, but I think 9/11 was an inside job. No, Jesse Ventura did not send it. This was sent by someone named Scott. It's a good question. Actually, for those of you who are fans of the television program Person of Interest, I produce a podcast right here on the DVM Podcast Empire called The Podcast of Interest, where we talk about that show. And one of the segments on that show is called News from the Machine, where we talk about the real life stuff like that, the Big Brother government type thing. And we dig into those stories about surveillance and things like that. It's I got a feeling Ken and I are on the same page as far as, the Fourth Amendment. So, there's a fine line between, is it protecting our nation and is it invading our privacy?
I think it's protecting our nation minimally at best.
Especially when there's no need for drones on our own territory.
Yeah, and I just I don't think that we have this impending threat of another 9/11 happening. I mean, I just don't.
Well, to be fair, I would argue that it's always a threat, but it would have always been a threat whether or not we were doing this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I just don't know how much. What good it's done, how much, it would be nice if we actually got to see, the information about the thwarted attempts, but we never do.
Yeah, we just hear that allegedly things have happened, but I would definitely love to see.
It'd be interesting to look at the amount of data that they've collected from the number of people that they've collected it from versus number of thwarted attempts. Or even conversations, and I would bet a lot that it's very, very minuscule.
So watch episodes of Homeland to get an idea.
And I just, which is a great show, by the way.
It is a great show. Great show.
Have you been watching season 4?
I'm caught up 100%.
I think it's the best season so far, to be honest with you.
Yes,
I love it.
I definitely enjoy the show. I don't want to start talking about it because I don't want to spoil it for people, but. Yeah.
No, but I don't think there's much we can do about it, really, unless you run for public office and try to change the system. I do believe that is the one way that we can change this system. If we don't like it, we can run for public office. We can go out and lobby. And when I say lobby, I don't mean in the sense that there's all these corporations that are lobbying politicians in Washington for money, but trying to persuade people to vote and to make their voices be heard that it's not okay to us.
Yeah.
And it is I believe that in a lot of ways the Constitution has just been thrown out the window, and the Fourth Amendment is just completely wiped. And we've talked about this. We talked about this when we talked about Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden, yeah. Edward Snowden.
9 plus 11 is 20. You think that's just a coincidence?
See, you can do it better because you got the Minnesota thing going on.
Minnesota. Yeah, I don't know. I think the Fourth Amendment is pretty much gone. Null and void. They can just do whatever they want.
Somewhere there's an eagle crying. All right, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you want to send in your feedback, and again, you can talk to us about anything, as these people did. Send us an email at pushthebuttonpodcast@gmail.com. In fact, while we were just recording, I got an email from somebody. This just goes to show we get ridiculous stuff from fans, and we love it. It is literally a statement. It says, ladies, if you are pregnant and you know your baby will be a boy, consider naming him Gotham. That way, when he starts crying in the middle of the night, all you have to do is turn to your man and whisper, Gotham needs you. It won't matter if it's his first time or the 100th time he's hearing it. He will always get up and take care of business. And you can roll over and get your well-deserved sleep. That came in from Steve Sant. Thank you, Steve. That was very true. If my child was named Gotham, I would always go, Gotham needs me.
If we have another child, I just might take that advice to heart.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. Push Button Pod on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook. Hit us up on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. We love hearing from you. Thanks for the reviews. Thanks for just the positive feedback. I haven't had a single person email us and say, you guys suck. Which, honestly, I'm surprised, because I figured we'd piss somebody off. But we haven't been so far, so this is interesting.
Not that we're fishing for, people to bury us, but we do appreciate constructive criticism.
We do, and we can take it. We don't get hot, as long as you don't get hot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we had let's put another one down in the can, and next week we'll be back with another episode. We'll talk about something equally as controversial, and we look forward to it. Ken, do you have anything you want to share with the audience?
Yes, folks, talk about it, think about it, pray about it, whatever you got to do. But all in all, at the end of the day, don't get hot.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Mr. Anderson.
Don't push it.